each of the major offices within the Executive Office of the President. The team also held over 30 virtual briefings. The first meetings were introductory to begin establishing a rhythm for working together leading up to the inauguration, and the first opportunity for agencies to present their transition plans to members of our teams. We hope that other virtual meetings, including with the White House and other offices in the Executive Office of the President, will follow today and in the days immediately after the Thanksgiving holiday. Those meetings will largely focus on critical policy areas for the American people in line with the President-elect and Vice President-elect's commitments and priorities, particularly related to COVID, health, and economic response. This includes Operation Warp Speed, PPE assistance, and housing evictions. We've also added our COVID-19 Advisory Board co-chairs, David Kessler, Vivek Murthy, and Marcella Nunes-Smith, to our HHS, DoD, and DHS agency review teams to ensure they can participate in those briefings. They will participate in briefings today and through the holiday weekend. On the national security and foreign policy side, agency review team leads have reached out to their assigned agencies within hours of ascertainment on Monday night, and nearly all have had initial contact with their points of contact. For our national security and foreign policy team, agency review will be focused on fact-finding, starting with the COVID response and urgent national security issues and threats, ranging from terrorist threats to state actors who might seek to exploit the transition period. As has been reported, sharing of classified information has also begun with the President-elect's senior team. We have strict COVID protocols in place, as you all know, and consistent with those, we expect the first in-person meetings between our team and their respective agency counterparts to begin next week. As you may have also heard the President-elect say yesterday, we're working with DNI and the White House on the President-elect and Vice President-elect receiving the PDB. We expect the first briefing to take place on Monday. With that, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Thank you so much, Jen. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. So something that cannot be overlooked is that despite a nearly 3-week delay in being able to make contact with these agencies, the reception from career civil servants has been professional and welcoming. Many have been preparing for this moment for several months, and their work is greatly appreciated as we begin making up for some lost time. From simple acts of hospitality like offering meal service or coffee to national security staff that may need to meet in person, to clearing schedules to meet with agency review members within a few hours. We thank everyone working to ensure that this transition is a success. As you all know, the President-elect named his first set of cabinet nominees and appointees this week. Our legal team met with the FBI and DOJ yesterday to begin processing background checks for incoming appointees. Following the signing of some additional paperwork today, we will submit information on the nominees and the White House senior team already announced to the DOJ and FBI this week. We will need those investigatory resources appropriately funded to allow for expedited background investigations given the delayed ascertainment. In terms of other logistical support, GSA has been responsive and helpful in providing access to necessary resources. That includes IT resources, provisioning email accounts for transition staff, and beginning to provide government-issued laptops. We're also working with GSA to gain access to additional secure space for classified briefings in Wilmington and in DC while following strict COVID protocols. And finally, we now have access to GSA funding to support our operations. Over the Thanksgiving holiday and Friday, the President-elect and Vice President-elect will be spending time with their respective families and do not have any scheduled in-person events. And we hope that you all also get to enjoy a little downtime and rest as well. Next week, you can anticipate that we will be rolling out additional names of people that President-elect Biden will nominate to serve in key positions in his administration, including his economic team. And so with that, we are happy to take a few questions.
Great, thanks. And I think we've got our first question from Yamiche.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this call and happy Thanksgiving ahead of time. My first question is, did this ascertainment and the transition officially beginning come quickly enough that there should be no impact on the transition? I talked to a couple of sources that thought that there would be no major problems with the way that it happened because it's come quickly enough.
So, Yamiche, I'm happy to start, and Jen may have some additional thoughts. But, of course, every day is critical in transition planning, which is why for months the Biden-Harris transition team has been preparing for all scenarios to ensure that the president-elect and the vice president-elect are ready to tackle our nation's challenges on day one. So given the challenges that the next administration will face, we obviously cannot afford any more delays as we move to get the pandemic under control and get our economy back on track. As you heard, in the first now, I guess, 72 hours since ascertainment, we have been encouraged by the reception that our teams have received across the agencies as they've reached out to their government counterparts. So we've been very encouraged by that. And obviously, we very much need the process to continue to move forward efficiently and smoothly. But given all of the preparatory work that's been done by our team, by the transition team, as we anticipated ascertainment, we believe we're in a very strong place to move forward and to make up for some of the time that we've lost.
I would only just add that as we saw yesterday, the president-elect has announced an incredible team of national security experts, and those are issues he's been working on for decades. And as we've long said, he knows his way around the Situation Room. So really what is so important and encouraging now is that we've had extraordinary cooperation from civil servants, employees at the State Department, Foreign Service officers, the backbone of so many of our institutions are those career employees. So as Kate said, that's really been encouraging, and we're hopeful that continues.
And then a quick follow-up, which is the Secretary of Defense hasn't been announced yet. Is there any update on timing for that cabinet position in particular and other cabinet positions going forward?
Well, I can start on this one. I can assure you there will be more cabinet announcements in the weeks ahead, so buckle up for December. But I will convey that, yesterday it was obviously an announcement of many important and vital members of President-elect Biden's national security team, but it was not all of the members, of course. There was not a Secretary of Defense announced, there was not a CIA nominee, there was not a head of USAID, and there will be more announcements on the national security front in the weeks ahead. Yesterday was also in part about sending the message about diplomacy and the kind of page we want to turn as we send a message to the world about who we are as a country and what President-elect Biden's agenda will look like and how it will differ from what we've seen over the last few years.
Thanks so much.
Great. We'll move on to our next question from Allie.
Hey guys, thanks for doing the call as usual. I know that the president-elect said yesterday that he has not yet spoken to President Trump. Is there a world in which you think he needs to talk to Trump, or are you guys getting sufficient information already from your conversations with others in the West Wing, Meadows, and then at the agency level?
So I'll start, Allie. Thanks for the question. As I say, we've been very encouraged by the progress that has been made over the last few days since we've received ascertainment. As Jen said, the career civil servants have been incredibly forthcoming, and the appropriately appointed officials who would normally participate in a transition process, as you saw, for example, in the letter from Chief of Staff Meadows, have been helpful. So in terms of being able to move the transition forward, our teams have been able to begin getting the information they need, and that process is moving efficiently. Obviously, it is critically important that continues to happen. So we do not feel that it is necessary for a President-elect Biden to speak with President Trump in order to get that information. We believe that we've been getting the information that our teams need. Certainly, should President Trump want to speak with President-elect Biden, then that's something we would work out in the future. But in terms of whether it is mission critical to being able to move the transition forward efficiently, no. We believe that the information that has been shared thus far and that the processes that are being set up have been very helpful and will continue to be moving forward.
And then I just had one more follow-up for you guys. Since the ascertainment letter has come through, has the president-elect or anyone else on your team heard from Republicans on the Hill? I know that some senators kind of came up to the line of saying that he should get briefings, but didn't call him president-elect. Have you heard from any more of them since that letter's come through?
So the president-elect has been speaking with a wide array of officials, some Democrats, some Republicans. I don't have any additional details on those calls that I can read out to you right now, except to say that he certainly has been having bipartisan conversations. That includes leaders on the Hill, but also includes leaders all across the country. I mean, you saw him do a meeting this past week with bipartisan group of governors to talk about COVID and the crisis that that these governors are facing in their states and the kind of partnership that they're looking for from the federal government. So I think that was an incredibly productive bipartisan conversation that signals that offers a lot of encouragement for how President-elect Biden is going to be able to work with bipartisan leaders to address these crises moving forward.
Thank you.
Great. Take our next question from Sabrina Siddiqui.
Hi, thank you guys so much for doing this. You obviously touched a little bit upon some of the conversations that are happening now between the transition and officials at the CDC and HHS. I know President-elect Biden said your team has been in touch with Dr. Fauci as well. Can you just walk us through some of the specifics in terms of the conversations you're having around coronavirus, what briefings you are expecting to hold with the outgoing administration, especially around vaccine distribution, and given the magnitude of the pandemic and the onus on the incoming administration to distribute the vaccine, what do you really think you'll have to achieve in the few weeks that you have between now and January 20th?
Yes, so thank you for that question. So agency review teams have reached out to every single relevant agency and the White House and are requesting briefings on all matters related to the COVID-19 response, with a particular focus on Operation Warp Speed and vaccine distribution, testing, and the PPE supply chain. So we're beginning those briefings today. We expect the remainder to take place immediately after the Thanksgiving holiday. So they are moving forward expeditiously. Obviously, our teams have had a lot of time to work through the core questions that they need to pose and the pieces of information that they most want to have clear visibility into in terms particularly of vaccine distribution, testing, and the PPE supply chain, as I mentioned. I think given the experience and the work of the agency review teams in this space, including people like Doctors Kessler, Murthy, and Nunez-Smith, who have tremendous experience and perspective in this space. I think that they have a clear sense of the kinds of questions that they need to pose first, and they believe that they are getting good information and are looking forward to this briefing today and to these additional briefings moving forward. So the short answer to your question is there's a particular focus on understanding the scope of where the process is on vaccine distribution, on testing, and on the PPE supply chain in particular.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Our next question, we'll move on to Alice Ollstein.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. I wanted to ask, so not only Ron Klain, but many of the people who are going to be part of the new administration worked on the Ebola response. And I wanted to ask, how is that experience informing the plans being put together now to combat COVID-19? Like, what specific lessons from Ebola are part of this?
Well, one piece I would just start, and then I'm sure Kate has lots of wisdom to add too, is one of the things that we've learned from the past is that this is not just a domestic issue, it's also an international issue. And there needs to be coordination across the national security and the domestic teams who, when working to address and get a pandemic under control. And certainly that was the case in Ebola. And our teams in the transition who have been working for months on plans. We love memos and slide decks and intelligent briefing materials, which, as Kate said, is we've been preparing for weeks for these meetings that are starting today. But there is a coordination and a cohesion across domestic and international work and expertise that we think will be essential and important as we look ahead. But I don't know, Kate, if there's other things we should add to that too, of course.
No, I think that's exactly right. Obviously, as you say, Ron Klain has tremendous experience in this space. And I think another perspective that President-elect Biden brings to this work is a desire to work in a bipartisan manner. And I think to depoliticize and to remove politics from the process of tackling a public health crisis. That's something that he and his team, as you note, have experience with in the past. And I think you've seen as some of the first meetings that President-elect Biden has held, public meetings that he's held over the course of the last couple of weeks on the pandemic. I think you've seen him really place a premium on taking politics out of this crisis, acknowledging that this virus is hitting blue states and red states equally, and offering his perspective on how we can work together cooperatively to tackle the virus. So I think his experience in handling these kinds of crises in the past and his experience in public service have shown him that a bipartisan approach is important, and that's one that he will take in tackling this virus.
That's why he's leading by example, right? I mean, the public communication portion of this, the leading by example, which we are all expected to do on the transition, is a big, part of our role at this period of time before he is inaugurated and takes office. And we are fully eyes open about the fact that there needs to be a rebuilt trust in government and institutions and what is communicated to the American people. And that's part of the discussion as well.
Given the pressing health crisis, how soon can we expect an announcement on an HHS secretary?
Well, I can assure you that it is. I can start. I can assure you that it is front and center on the top of the minds of President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, and certainly the White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, given how important the health team will be moving forward, but certainly as we work to get the pandemic under control. And I would expect we will have, of course, some members of the economic team, as we've announced, will be announced next week, but I think there will be more cabinet announcements soon thereafter.
Okay, and we'll take our last question from Nicole Killian.
Hi, thanks so much for doing the call. Just to follow up with you on the economic announcement, it's been widely reported that Janet Yellen has been selected. So will she be announced next week? And what other parts of the economic team can we expect? Are we talking Council of Economic Advisors, U.S. Trade Representative? If you could give us a better sense of some of the positions. And then secondly, just wondering if you have any comment about President Trump, who is expected to go to Pennsylvania today for this election hearing, even though the Commonwealth has certified its results. Thank you.
So on the cabinet piece, I would say that, he will announce some members, the president-elect will announce some members of his economic team next week. Not all of the members. There are quite a few vital roles on the economic team for any administration. I'm not going to outline for you here which specific roles those will be because I don't want to get ahead of the president-elect and the vice president-elect's announcement. But I will just convey that his team will look like America. It will be diverse ideology and background. And it will be a team that will be ready to support his agenda to build back our economy better than before.
And on your question about President Trump in Pennsylvania, Nicole, what I would say is, look, the election is over. Virtually everyone on earth has accepted that truth, except for Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani. The Trump campaign has been laughed out of every courtroom with their meritless and baseless lawsuits meant to undermine the will of the American people. This is a sideshow. The president-elect, as you've seen from the work he's done over the past few weeks, is focused entirely on the business of the American people, of moving the country forward, of beginning to tackle these simultaneous crises that the country is facing. He was elected with 80 million votes and won 306 electoral college votes because the American people want him to move forward, to tackle these crises, to restore leadership to the White House. That is what he's focused on, and that's what he'll continue to focus on in his transition as we move forward.
Thank you all so much for your time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, guys.